Yeah, I think we can get started here. Uh, Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining today. My name is Kevin Lobo, and I'm the Executive Vice President of Consulting here at Analytics8. My job today is to serve as moderator and host of our webinar, and I'm really excited for our topic. Today, we're going to be covering the topic of Model Context Protocol, which is a key driver in connecting AI tools to enterprise data. We'll also be discussing its practical application and impact in a real-life client setting at EMC Insurance. Joining me today on our panel is Rob Vicker and John Biemendorfer. Rob is a data analytics architecture director at EMC Insurance, and John is a principal AI consultant here at Analytics8. Rob, if you don't mind, if you could just give you a quick introduction and a little bit on your background.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. As Kevin said, I'm a data analytics architecture director here at EMC. Been with EMC almost exactly 4 years. We've been on a journey to modernize our architecture for 5, 6 years. Went live in 2022, early 2022, so just about 4 years ago. And then with that, we've also recently been taking that stack, because that was more on the application side, taking that stack, moving it, dbt, Snowflake, and now obviously looking at how we can accelerate some of our initial warehouse development with MCP servers.
Awesome. And John, if you don't mind giving a quick intro on yourself, a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I'm John Biemendorfer, principal consultant. I have been in the data consultancy industry for almost a decade now, kind of hitting on data engineering, data architecture work, as well as report building, primarily within Power BI. And in the past several years, whenever ChatGPT came up, and focused a lot more on generative AI and trying to keep up to date with all the changes within the industry itself. But yeah, excited to be here. Excited to talk about MCP.
Awesome. Okay, so I wanted to start with the basics. For those of you unaware of what MCP is, it's an open source standard for connecting AI applications to external systems. However, John, I'm pretty sure that you can probably do a much better job explaining it than I can. So if you don't mind, could you walk us through kind of a brief overview of the concept itself?
Yeah, so before we really jump into what MCP is, I kind of just want to set the ground here. These are things that we've been seeing with clients as well as internally as we have been exploring MCP, building out some of our offerings here. These are the four biggest blockers that we've seen as it relates to organizations trying to operationalize their AI. Most of it gets stuck in an R&D phase or in an AI strategy phase, but these four things are typically the biggest issues that we find. So the first one's data readiness, and this is not necessarily unique to AI, but it is just as important. So a lot of clients we have, and what we've seen in the field is they're fragmented, siloed, low quality data, and as a result, AI struggles to perform or to produce the output that the industry or the company is looking for. The next one is scope paralysis. So leadership says we need an AI strategy, and then suddenly there's this 6 month initiative. They want to transform everything, almost boil the ocean. But it's too large of an initiative. There's no ROI, there's no value that's being proven or shown, and as a result, the project stalls or goes away. And then there's the skill gap. So, and this is not to say that the people on the team aren't smart or anything. It's just that organizations nowadays have a lot of different systems, and some of those systems have their own language, syntax, so on and so forth. So, like SQL Server or
Mhm.
Snowflake or a CRM, all of those require specialized knowledge, and that creates bottlenecks. And then the last one is security and privacy. And this is especially true for regulated industries. There are a lot of questions around compliance, data governance. Is our data safe? Are we going to have to upload it to a third party server? This, for some organizations, is a non-starter. Um, so these are the typical headwinds that we see whenever we are looking, whenever we're working with our clients and how we can operationalize their AI. But I want to take a look at where most organizations sit today. So This is a diagram, we call it the AI gap, and it consists of four different stages. Most of, I think a lot of people are in stage one. This is where LLMs, it's an isolated use. This is where teams are using things like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini. It's for like research and drafting. But there's a disconnect between business systems. They're not pulling in data. They may copy and paste something into ChatGPT or something, but there's no real connection to their systems. Uh, the second one is AI-powered workflows. So AI connects to some data through automations, such as like classifying tickets, enriching records. It's useful but narrow, and it's usually predefined. This is where most AI-forward companies stop. Then there's this execution barrier. So the technical barrier between stage two and three is smaller than stage four is smaller than people assume. It's the execution barrier that is massive here. So this requires a rethinking of how systems communicate and how teams operate when AI actually acts and not just assists. So companies that have tried to cross this gap, they typically do it with custom code. As a result, there's fragile integrations, bespoke connectors, slow to build, it's expensive to maintain, and with the speed at which the industry has been evolving, it's difficult to keep it running and working with the latest models. And then finally, there's stage three and there's stage four, but stage three is where AI shifts from just being a sidekick to a doer. So these are agents that interpret data, they make decisions, and they take action across your stack. And I think this is where a lot of organizations want to go. And then finally, there's stage four, kind of the end goal there, where you're using AI to run and make decisions across an entire department or coordinating between departments and things like that. But
Awesome.
so
No,
for, yeah, go ahead.
no, sorry, I interrupted you there.
Yeah. So MCP, so going to MCP. So MCP is, we see the execution barrier there. MCP is a bridge that makes the step between stage two to step three possible. And so if we go into actually answering what is MCP, you go to the next slide, Kevin. So MCP is, as Kevin had mentioned earlier, it's a open source standard for connecting AI applications to external systems. The way that I like to think of MCP is like a USB port for AI applications. So it's not just that USB provides a standardized way to connect to electronic devices, regardless of the operating system. MCP provides a standardized way for AI applications to connect to external systems, regardless of the model or how you're using it. So with MCP, you can build once and use everywhere. Different models, it can be through an interactive user interface, or it can be an agentic workflow. So it could be automatic or automated. Then there's also another benefit is you're working with your data. You're actually taking action on your data. You're not just chatting about it. It's not a back and forth with a chatbot. And then it's also AI that can work with your real data in real time, securely, and repeatedly. So the diagram on the right-hand side, you can see that there's these MCP servers that connect to various platforms, your local file store, and it's able to interact with all of those either through a AI client, such as a desktop application, or through an agentic workflow. So going back to the problems that those headwinds earlier that we were talking about, this is where MCP allows you to kind of get past those blockers. So MCP connects siloed systems into one interface. It unifies your data access. It allows you to see your data warehouse, your CRM, your file shares all as one ecosystem. It also allows you to have clear and immediate value. So quick wins through immediate productivity gains. ROI becomes visible, not just theoretical. It lowers the barrier to entry. So people on the team can use natural language to replace complex queries. Teams use AI effectively without having deep prompting expertise. And then finally, built-in security and control. So data stays in place with consistent access controls, audit trails, and compliance guardrails. So this is kind
Awesome.
of in a nutshell the benefits of MCP. I'll pass it over to Kevin.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate you giving that overview. I think it's really beneficial table setting for the conversation we're going to have, some of the demo components that we'll also run into. And so that's probably as good of a time to shift to our panel discussion. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. So again, this is the panel discussion component where Rob, John, and I are going to kind of dive into the use case at hand at EMC. So, Rob, I'm going to kick things off with you. First question goes to you. So, tell me about how this journey with MCP started at EMC to begin with. What challenges were you facing initially to start, and how did you land on MCP specifically and leveraging it as a solution for the organization?
Yeah, and I'll even probably back up a little bit there because we've been, you know, playing is probably not a strong word for it. We've been using and really endorsing and researching kind of since the quote AI boom of a couple, year and a half,
Yeah.
whatever, 2 years ago, and really trying to find ways that we can, use it to get real use cases there. And one of the things, just a quick background to kind of help is since we are moving everything from our existing warehouse, which is all just Snowflake query based and
Yep.
views, to dbt. So we're looking at how do we accelerate that. We also, as we built things out, we realized that we have, one of the big things, that I even talked about at Coalesce is that one version of the truth and the semantic layer on that.
Mhm.
And where a lot of that came from was we have a lot of different versions of the truth today. We have,
Yeah.
say, our different metrics, loss ratio or earned premium or and such, happen a lot in both in Power BI and in different queries and views in different places. So we were kind of saying, how do we get one of those? Well, one of those, the biggest things we found was, to tackle first was, how do we find out all the different versions of that just to start with? And we
Yep.
knew, again, we knew a lot of those happened in Power BI, and working with John a lot and kind of going through that is how do we go into Power BI and ask those questions? How can we go into a workspace and say, tell me everything about it. What's in there? What metrics are there? What DAX is there? I mean, it's very, I assume John's going to probably part of the demo later. It's very comprehensive in what it gives us, right? So we can use that to say, ask questions of, and then if you look at the different MCP pieces, we can tie some of those together and say, show me all the places that earned premium is
Yep.
calculated, so that then we can say, this is the one we want to have. So when we build our data products, now we have one version, of that. But, even with that, I would say so that's kind of where it started from, because we kind of started looking at how do we kind of the chatbot interface, how do we help
Yeah.
some of our developers, maybe help some of our product people, and then it just evolved from there. I would say, big shout out to my boss, his vision. I think having executive leadership of this and really someone that understands what the value is huge, because we were, you know, I look at it a lot as there's a lot of in the industry and in the talk, hey, find a use case that gives you immediate value.
Yeah.
And when you're doing something as new and greenfield as MCP work, that's hard potentially. So it also takes hey, we got to kind of put some resources towards this to figure it out first. And so having
Yeah.
that executive and having my boss really kind of drive that, hey, we need to support shifting some resources to this so that we can really dive in, understand how it works and that so that we can get to the value. Because it's sometimes it's hard off the beginning to say, I mean, if you have to tie it, and I'm not, as John will probably talk about, I'm not saying you have to do that for a year. We've moved in a matter of weeks and months on this, but
Yeah.
some of it was definitely exploratory.
Yeah, and I think the pace of development that you guys have had over the course of the last couple months, that's one of the most impressive points. And I think it's
I would
interesting that
agree.
you bring up the Power BI use case because that's a really good use case to practically apply this to start. So for those of you who are out there who are listening right now, who may not necessarily have a good handle or viewpoint on like how much work Rob is talking about for that initial Power BI use case. If you are trying to find the single source of truth across multiple Power BI reports, across multiple workspaces, across different service accounts, I mean, you're talking about I have to go through 40, 50, 60, 70 different individual reports, parse through the logic that's in DAX to figure out, is my recoupment rate or my revenue figure. How many different times are we defining this across all these
Yep.
individual reports? That is a time intensive effort. And the use case that Rob is talking about effectively leveraged MCP, basically read all of that metadata out of all of those Power BI reports and very simply and sequentially figure out, hey, how are we defining all of these metrics across a multitude of reports? So having
Yeah.
developed in Power BI, I can only tell you I know that nightmare scenario and how much work it entails. So that's a really unique, very relevant use case that's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah,
Um,
it's been huge to be able to do that, right? The amount that we've found, the information that we've found, is, and we're just on the cusp of it because we've only been doing this maybe, a couple of months here.
yeah.
We're really diving in to say how do we use that, but the questions that we've been able to answer is just been phenomenal.
And so I know you're actively facilitating multiple MCP use cases across EMC. I'd be really curious to hear more uh, about how you leverage MCP specifically to accelerate your migration to DBT. That just seems like such a really just common use case that we see
Yeah.
across clients, prospects, migration from legacy code bases to something new. And I know there are probably others that are out here on the webinar today that would love to hear a lot more about that.
Yeah, it's a great, I would say that as far as like quote dipping your toes and maybe finding that real business dollar value fast, a semi lift and shift
Yep.
is a perfect example. And that's what we did. So as we started kind of diving in, we have a lot of different we have multiple MCP server efforts all within the same group, and then
Mhm.
different tools inside of those. And we just kind of keep adding to those a little bit. And one of those that as we started to explore, we said we actually have a visualization methodology and product that we're with our products and that we're trying to retire, and we've got kind of one piece of it left. And we said, hey, could we take the MCP servers because it's all just queries based, right? It's all SQL. And we
Yep.
said, can we take those, read in all of those, all that SQL, and then in one MCP instance for the ingest, one tool, and then use the DBT tool to say, now create all of my DBT objects, right? Create that project.
Yep.
And because we're trying to get off of that to get, it's kind of one of our last pieces. There's a lot of cost still with that, but it's also just we're almost there, right? And we've done a lot of legwork there, but we still estimated we were probably looking at 4,000 hours to get rid to manually do all of that work. And we did pull it all in, turn it into DBT. And our first run of building all those DBT projects was 96%, I believe, accurate. And then we were just able to say, let's go look at, I mean, so I think we were the whole team, and I think John can say this, we're kind of astounded that it was that good, right? It's not always that good. There's lots of hallucinations. You
Yep.
have to work through all of those things like with any AI. This use case, if it's like a lift and shift and something that the tools do really well, and I think that's where MCP versus just an AI chatbot, because we have a tool that understands the DBT structures, right? So using the
Yep.
DBT MCP server, we were able to say, create these structures. And so then now we're able to spend the small amount of time on the rest of them and getting that 4% to 6%, whatever it is, that very small percentage, and get those ported over and then testing, and then we'll be done. And that all
Yeah.
happened from, hey, here's the idea of an MCP. Could we go look at doing this? To our first build was about 4 weeks.
So
One person.
that's just from a time basis perspective. I mean, you said it. You said you were forecasting 3 to 4,000 hours to complete
Yeah.
this.
And we looked at that. We double checked the numbers, and I think I mean, we felt it wasn't out of line, you
Yeah.
know.
But that's just remarkable. 3,000 to 4,000 hours to 4 weeks on something that, you're
Yeah.
starting to scale up. I mean, that's significant
Yeah.
impact, and I think that's something that is obviously caught our attention. That's why we're talking about it today. But
Right.
it's just
Well, and
it's
those are if you can find a few of those, right? Because
yeah,
not all of them are by any
yeah.
means. Not every case is going to be that. But there's been value in every case we've done. But then if you find a few slam dunks, it makes everything worthwhile, right?
No, I love it. And I know You had two other use cases in which you applied MCP, one specifically for claims operations, semantic model analysis, and then the other for data lineage. So I was wondering if you could provide a little bit
Mhm.
more context on those use cases as well.
Yeah, so one of the things as we're moving from our current architecture into DBT, we kind of want to understand how do we, what is all the lineage of pieces so that we can start to say, how do we kind of lift and shift these things, right? And part of what we're using it today, and it's going to take us a little bit of analysis to get there, but the information we have, we
Mhm.
were just working through some of this morning, is it gives us all the information to say, here is all the lineage. So we can say, okay, all of our products that we've been building for a year, let's try to figure out what percentage do we still have to transfer, right?
Yep.
And to be able to do that, and what we're doing is saying, we're really we're adding a lot of business value. We're getting, all the product things of getting, governance is involved, all the great things of building a product. But a lot of the code, we're still a property and casualty insurance company. Those things didn't change. They've been very similar for 100 years. So
Yep.
that dimensional model and all of those things are going to be very similar. But we're moving, basically changing the source of those because today it's something that's more proprietary than that. So to be able to own it, well, to do that, we have to have end-to-end lineage of those. We
Yep.
have a lot of that in our in Calibra in our data governance tool. We're able to take a lot of that information kind of out of there and use the MCP service to say, hey, give me this whole end-to-end lineage piece so that we
Mhm.
can understand, okay, we want to build some of the same structures. Eventually, we still have to do earned premium, we have to do written premium, we have to do losses, all that kind of stuff, fun stuff that insurance companies do,
Yep.
but help us trace back through to the source system so that we can hopefully accelerate all that code because today it's all kind of in a black box in the SaaS product, right? But
Yep.
we do have access to the source. So we're a little bit newer on that one, but I think that that's going to be from a long-term aspects going to be huge savings. I think we're going to see the ability to accelerate our development on those just from an understanding standpoint, exponentially over the next 6 to 9, 12 months.
Yep.
So that's been big, and I think that will
And
be huge.
and so that will effectively take everything from source, I'm guessing ingestion, transformation, warehousing
Yes.
layer, reporting layer, and basically trace it
Yep.
all the way
All the
back.
way. Yeah, because today, again, we have access to that code, but it's
Yep.
up in our vendor's cloud, and it's more manual that we have to go against it, right? Because that's their
Yep.
SaaS product and that. But we have access to the source code, so we kind of have here's how it looks on this end, here's how it
Mhm.
looks, on the reporting side, and so how do we use that to say get us everything in between, right? So that
Yeah.
we at least and the way we're approaching that is we know it's not going to be perfect, but can it get us 60% of the way there, 80% of whatever it is, right? That's still a huge amount of work that we don't have to do.
And I think one other thing that I think would be probably helpful for our viewers, because I know firsthand, I mean, I hover around the project enough. John's obviously in the project. We're talking to you. How how long did it take for these three initiatives in particular, and the others that are kind of coming up, to really start getting that momentum, those wins? I guess what was like the time duration that we're talking about?
Yeah, we've well, I talked about the one, and that was really now, it's not like we've kind of taken that and said now we have to do some of the testing and validation with the
Yep.
business. So that, but it's from the technical side, it was like 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, one person. I would say that John, keep me honest here, but I would say 3 months, 3 months, we've kind of been working through these different aspects, and we have, I want to say, four different versions of MCP and different tools inside of there. And at some level of making them productionalized, let's put it that way. I used to say as a consultant, all that when I was a consultant, don't use that word because I always mess it up in talks,
Yeah.
but making it productionalizing it. So, in a matter of months, we've gone from zero to from a hey, what could we do with this? What's it look like? What are the use cases? How could we to we're really trying to embed it in our everyday work now.
Yeah.
And our plans are Q1, we'll have it, people using it every day on a broader scale. We have a subset of people using it every day today, and then we'll have more of that going forward.
That's remarkable progress in a very short amount of time.
I would
Uh,
agree, and definitely, thank Analytics8, for kind of taking the lead on a lot of those
uh,
too. So
Thank you for being a forward-leaning partner, if anything, too. It always kind of takes the organizational like maturity and want and desire to go in that direction, which is
yeah,
probably
I think
actually
you're
good.
right, and that goes back to, I'd say that again, of the vision of my boss, of our VP of analytics, has been a huge driving force of this, and we wouldn't be able to do it without that kind of support, because he's been able to sell it, right, to get the priority for it, to do, to get to have that vision. So I think even though he and I have been talking about these type of things for a while, you need that level of, I mean, I think that's a takeaway, is like a lot of things, having that level of executive report
Yep.
or executive, support is vital.
Awesome. All right. Last question for you, and I think it's actually probably a good one to jump off on. What are some emerging projects or ideas that you're excited to leverage MCP or just AI in general for in 2026? Is there anything that you're real excited
Yeah.
about? Anything that's emerging? Just be kind of curious.
I think there's a couple aspects of it. I think the one is seeing how um, different products and different vendors start to incorporate these things to make it
Yep.
easier for us. Because there are places that it's easier. I was able to personally kind of take, with the help of John and some others, and taken into like a Claude, desktop, and say, create like a chatbot that says, hey, go out to our DBT work, explain to me what loss ratio is and how do we use it, and then go to the Snowflake MCP and actually give me a set of sample records. And it kind of went through and said, well, the industry does this. You guys are using it like this. Here's your DBT models that support this structure and code. And hey, here's some sample data. I think that getting that to the masses is going to be
Yep.
huge. And I think then it takes on the next life of it, of that kind of AI into BI. So where you have
Mhm.
that kind of information, and then you get to a point and you go, hey, this is awesome. I answered some questions. Now I'd like to kind of visualize it, right? So then you're jumping off into, some sort of BI tool that says, hey, we have a BI as part of this. Now I can go do more traditional BI and get to some of the visualizations and pieces that I want. Those are the two things I think that are super exciting for the next year for me.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, you guys have made so much progress in such a short amount of time. I think it's really remarkable to see. I know
It,
it's,
it is,
you
and
know,
that's what I would tell. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, but
oh,
what I say is, people kind of ask me, and we've had discussions, John and I have had these, of what does the future look like? And
yep.
everybody kind of says, well, I don't see it doing this. I don't see it doing that. I've completely stopped making those predictions, because I look at everything that we're doing 6 to 7 months ago wasn't available.
Yeah.
It wasn't even really out there. I mean, people were kind of starting to talk about MCP, and now, things are out there. So to say that X won't happen, I'm like, I'm done. I'm not saying that, because I don't know what it's going to look like,
No,
which I think is exciting and fun.
it's pioneering stuff. It's pioneering stuff. So,
Yeah.
tip of the hat to you guys. John, question for you.
Mhm.
So you helped architect and build some of the solutions that we discussed today. I'm curious on what you view as a starting point, prerequisite for organizations that are looking to leverage MCP, particularly as it applies to the concept of data readiness or having a solid data foundation.
Yeah, obviously data is everything. Your AI can only produce what you give it. So, whenever I'm on a project, whenever we first started this at EMC, talking to Rob and Lax, the first thing that I think we have to do is define a use case that is targeted, that's narrow. You don't want to boil the ocean. You don't want to try and shoot for the stars. And do something too big. You want to be realistic and pragmatic about it. And frankly, that's one of the things that I've enjoyed about working with Rob. Is we're coming at this with a pragmatic approach. So defining the use case, and then the second thing that I try to think about is what's the output? What ultimately am I actually looking for? Um, is it going to be a table? Is it going to be, migration code to DBT? Is it going to be, a report from the Power BI tool, MCP server we built? And then from there, I work back. So what are the inputs? What data do I actually have available to me that will allow me to achieve the output I'm looking for? And as it relates to data readiness, data quality is always a big thing,
Yeah.
it's the most important thing. So once I've identified what my inputs are going to be, is it how many different systems are they going that I need to pull from? Do we have connections to those systems? Is there a way to actually leverage MCP to use it? I then look to see what the quality of that data is. Is it, do I need to do any sort of aggregation? Do I need to do any parsing? How much of that do we need to do? And then finally, where does it make sense to do that? If you have a data warehouse, you try and do that going into the data warehouse and pulling from the data warehouse, if that's a possibility. Do you go to an API and once you pull the response back, do you have to parse that out? So really trying to get the data in clean, and then trying to just get the data that matters for an MCP server to then give to a model in order for it to produce that output that we're looking for. So definitely defining the use case, identifying the outputs, identifying the inputs if they're clean enough, and then where are we
Yep.
going to clean it and process it. So that's kind of the steps I look at.
Awesome. Okay, I'm just gonna do a quick time check of where we're at, and we are on schedule. So we're doing great, guys. So I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna share my screen real quick. All right. So that wraps up the panel component of our webinar today. And with the time remaining that we have, we wanted to shift gears to a demo. So we were just talking about MCP in concept, which is great. You're probably familiar now with some of the use cases that Rob and the EMC team, along with Analytics8, were able to help facilitate. Um, but seeing it in action is what really brings it to life. So what we're going to run through today is our very own Analytics8 MCP framework. This is a proprietary solution. This is something that we spent a lot of R&D on in the background to help accelerate the configuration, the stand-up, and execution of MCP servers in standard data analytics development. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John. I'll stop sharing my screen. And John, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so for this particular use case, you kind of imagine yourself, you have a team, you're trying to migrate from your legacy SQL Server. You have time constraints, you have budget constraints. You want to migrate that into dbt. How are you going to do that? As Kevin had mentioned, I'm going to show real quickly our Analytics8 MCP framework. We put a UI on top of it so that other consultants within the organization can leverage it, spin up their own MCP server, either internally or even for a client. It's a configuration-driven process, and I'll just walk through the UI real quick. After that, I'll jump into Claude Desktop. Once I've gone through and set up a server, I'll show how Claude Desktop works with these servers that we stand up. And you could use anything. At EMC, we used GitHub Copilot. You could use Gemini. You could use ChatGPT. And then once we go through the prompting to kind of actually see how this MCP server works in practice, I'll then switch over to VS Code and show just the output really quickly. So without further ado, I will stop talking, go ahead and share my screen. Um, so we're an analytics company. It's in the name. One of the things that we have in our MCP server framework is a dashboard to quickly just show kind of how our servers are doing. So these are all servers that we've stood up. We can see the active servers, deployments, tool invocations, which is the most important thing. How are these tools being used? What are some of the failure rates, and how do we address those? So keeping an eye on that. We also have within our framework a tool catalog. This is just a subset of the catalogs we have, but we have some catalogs here that our consultants can come in and select, and then leveraging the MCP server framework, they're able to generate a server and start using MCP. But enough with the catalogs. I'll go over to the actual server. So setting up a server usually is something that would probably take a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, depending on resources, depending on the consultant. This allows us to create an MCP server within a matter of minutes. So the average time is about 6 minutes. Again, I said it was configuration driven. I don't want to bore y'all by typing in everything. So I'm just going to populate this using our demo populate. and I'll fly through. So these are configurations. All of our clients have different needs. Internal, we have different needs. We're able to quickly go through and configure these servers. We can select the tool catalogs we would like, but for the sake of the demo, I'm just going to go ahead and move through. There's two parts to this particular process. The first part is we actually generate the file using a Jinja template. We can download that project locally and run it locally, or we can put it, load it up into AWS. So I'm going to go ahead and just demo that really quick here. I would say DBT, and then I'll start the deployment. So as we set this up, it just starts to run through a script that we have validating and doing all these different steps. And so any consultant can come in here, stand up one of these servers. I don't want to bore y'all. All this takes about, like I said, 6 minutes. I know that we have a time limit, so I want to jump over to Cloud Desktop in a moment. But I've already used this to set up two different servers. One of them will allow us to connect to our legacy SQL Server instance, and then the other one will allow us to connect to our DBT project. So I'll go ahead and stop. I'll switch over my screen really quick to Cloud Desktop. So Cloud Desktop is, again, what I'm using. You could use something like ChatGPT or Gemini or GitHub Copilot. I've already pre-prompted the prompt here. I've already created the prompt. What I want to show real quick is how we're connected. So down here we have SQL Server Explorer. That's the name of the that I've given it for our SQL Server legacy system. And then we have our DBT writer that will help us write our models that we're trying to migrate over from our SQL Server. For the prompt itself, it's a very basic prompt, very straightforward. I'm asking for it to analyze a specific sort procedure, migrate that transformation logic to our local DBT project. I'm doing a dim product table right now, and then targeting a Databricks SQL syntax. I give it some instructions, and then kind of what I'm looking for is the output, just to kind of keep it on track. So I'll go ahead and start this. So what we'll see here is we'll see it start to use our MCP server. So right now it's thinking about what it's going to do. It has access to these MCP tools that are in our MCP servers. So this is one of the things. It's using a skill and not the MCP server right now. Of course, during the demo, it does this.
So I think while we're kind of walking through that there, I think for important context, John, what you just set up within the framework itself configures the MCP server, effectively allows that to be used as a utility, and then Claude for the IDE for what you're using right now, that's what you're effectively using to execute.
Yes, and yeah, it's one of the fun things about a live demo is I try and do it before this and it works just fine, and now it's going to go off and try and use a different method of doing it. So let me simplify this prompt real quick, and I will hopefully that will work. Yeah, I'm not sure why it went off on a skill. All right, here we go. So now it's going to use our server. It's going to get our stored procedure definition that I defined here. It's gathering all of it. It's able to read and access the server itself. And I got a failure. So awesome. The demo, the joys of a demo.
Live demos.
Yes. So it's now going to ask if I want to use a specific writer. It's actually using the tool now that I have in my DBT writer to convert the stored procedure. And when you're using this on these types of clients, it allow you to it asks for your permission to run something so that it's not running something that you don't want to run. So again, it's asking again if it can parse the stored procedure. So I have several different tools here that are some of them will parse the stored procedure. They'll convert the stored procedure into a DBT model. And and follow that issue. So yeah, I'm running into some errors for whatever reason right now, but yeah. So I will. I guess for the sake of the demo, I will go over and switch to VS Code and show some of the previous runs that I've done, um, and kind of what that ultimately ends up producing. Again, these are um, all generated. And I think there actually are some here that we're able to carry over. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Um, all right, so we can see here we have our it's a very simple basic MCP demo. We can see our stage tables here. We can see our model, our DIM product here. So I was able to go in there, pull out the information from that stored procedure, and then recreate that logic within our DBT project in the format and the structure that DBT requires. We have snapshot. You can add the ability to do tests if you want to, leverage macros and such as well, with a little bit more prompting. Um, but in a nutshell, this is how fast we can build out these different DBT models. So what normally would have taken, I mean, Rob mentioned it earlier, they were thinking 4,000 hours. We were able to significantly reduce that. The same process and the same MCP server implementations, we can do that with SQL Server, for instance, and other legacy systems. So migrating from a legacy system to DBT, you're able to do that now very quickly, exponentially faster than you would have otherwise before. So it's been, that would be the demo for the MCP server. I do want to say, in terms of kind of hitting on what Rob mentioned earlier, MCP is not a magic bullet. It's not going to make everything 100%. You're still going to have to review it, have a human in the loop. But one of the great things that we have found at EMC while we've been working on the MCP implementations there is things improve very quickly. So once you run into an issue, you're able to resolve that, and it doesn't happen again. You continue to improve and optimize. All of those optimizations continue to have downstream impacts, a significant increase in delivery time, like a reduction in delivery time. And obviously the stories that Rob has said have been impressive and have kind of unlocked some new potential. And I think 2026 is going to be an exciting year. And also with MCP too, there are a ton of different use cases out there. This is a very simple one. In this particular demo, we were just migrating the transformation logic from SQL Server to DBT. What you'd want to be able to do in a production system is do some data profiling, pull that transformation logic in, validate that the transformation logic is correct, and do some A/B testing. So create that entire end-to-end type of migration, automation. That's something you can do with MCP. But it's an exciting time. The protocol just hit a year old, and there's a lot of changes and a lot of enhancements that they're adding to it. So yeah, it's an exciting tool, and I'm looking forward to what comes out next.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think it is exciting, and I think going actually, so I was learning you can always take a positive from everything. So from your demo, I was actually, I think, wondering if what it's running into is kind of inherently sometimes the LLMs and some of that get confused when you put multiple things together, and you have to be very explicit. We learned that very early on. Now, Anthropic is actually, I just saw they released some new versions to try and help that, because that's more of a bug as you go through there, and even when you're explicit, sometimes it thinks it's smarter than you, and you have to go be even more explicit or explicit again. And one of the things I know that the models are trying to do is to say, hey, we need to kind of understand that even those like four tools you've told me to use one tool, don't go anywhere else. And I think that's something that we continue to see, and it's not really a fault of like the code or anything there. It's the fault of the actual LLMs, and they're improving on that all the time. So I think it's moving so fast, as you said, John. I was literally just reading that this morning. So
Yeah.
John. I appreciate that. And I know we will definitely post webinar. We can record that demo and we'll have it out there for you folks. But with the time remaining, let me just go back and I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So with the time remaining that we have, I just wanted to quickly close out, highlight some prerequisites, some key takeaways for folks out there that are looking to explore MCP for their organization. So a lot of this touches upon concepts that both Rob and John discussed today. So we'll start with number one. Be clear on the problem that you're looking to solve for first. MCP helps to amplify focus, but it doesn't create it in and of itself. Its utility is going to be tied to the clear use case that you have in mind. Second point, as in all things data, clean, reliable data is foundational. Readiness for MCP starts with readiness of your data foundation. That's a fundamental truth and something that it's really hard to get away from. Next is going to be platform access and connectivity. I think one of the big hurdles in getting this stood up is ensuring that the necessary systems, uh, the necessary systems that you have in use have access and permissions to interact with each other. Your IT and your network team are going to be a part of this process internally, so definitely be prepared from that point of view. Um, Next point is that this will be a shift should you adopt. So the more familiarity, the more comfort your team has in leveraging AI tooling in their day-to-day, the better you can actually ease yourself into this transition. And then final point, for this to work, people need to be ready in terms of changing how they work. This isn't just new tooling. It's a different way in which data teams are going to be executing their workflows, their engineering tasks, something different than they're used to. Change can be difficult, so be ready for it. It definitely helps to have strong advocates. I know Rob made that point earlier in the panel discussion. It helped that there was firm, strong vision and leadership within EMC Insurance to adopt solutions like this. So with that, that does it for our content today. I want to take a moment. I want to thank everybody out there for attending. I wanted to thank both panelists for participating today. I've been working in the data analytics industry for a long time now. I do truly believe that this concept has the high potential to really fundamentally change the way that things are done within the data analytics ecosystem. I'm a pragmatic Midwesterner. I'm not prone to hyperbole, so it takes a lot for me to say something like that. But if you do have any questions or you'd like to discuss how your organization can leverage MCP, please reach out to myself. Please reach out to John or take a look at our website for more information. We also recently published an AI readiness research report that's available for download on our website. Strongly encourage you to take a look at that as well. So again, I want to thank Rob. I want to thank John for their time today. And with that, I will open it up for any questions before we wrap up. So any questions, I'm going to take a look and see if there's anything popping up in the chat. I guess, Rob, John, any final thoughts on your side?
I would just echo what you said. I mean, I think next year is going to be really exciting in this space. I think it's if you go back to the Gartner hype cycle, right? I think that whole hype cycle kind of went through two iterations in like 6 months. So I think
Yeah.
it's gonna be fun to watch, right? And I think it's gonna be fun to see where we can truly, as businesses, bring value because there is a lot of hype, there is a lot of fun, flashy things, but there's a lot of value to be had there. And I think the companies that figure that out of how to get the value piece out
Yep.
are going to be the ones that benefit the most by far.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think 2026 is going to be a very big year in terms of AI and how organizations are able to use it. The frameworks that have been being, are being built, they're easier to implement now. They have the infrastructure. With MCP, you can connect to, various different systems very easily. And a lot of vendors and platforms that we use are coming out with their own MCP servers. So leveraging those with, custom MCP, custom logic for your organization. I think it's going to be a big year. And the thing too with MCP is it improves with the models as well. So as the models
Yeah.
continue to get better, that's going to have the tools automatically get better. So it'll be exciting to see.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to take one last final look if there are any questions in the chat. All right. Well, again, if you do have any questions out there, feel free to reach out to myself. Feel free to reach out to John. We are real people. You can find us on LinkedIn. We're happy to have a conversation. Again, I just wanted to thank Rob for your time today, taking the time out to discuss this topic. I think it's always just so unique to get a client viewpoint on this. So I very much so appreciate that. Very much so appreciate the partnership with EMC Insurance. And honestly, it's been so much fun watching this develop from where I
Yeah, I
sit.
agree.
Just the pace of innovation over the course of a short few months. I mean, that's it's pretty remarkable to see. So
Yep,
kudos
I'd
and
agree.
hat tip to you guys.
Thank you.
Huh. All right, everybody. We'll have the recording available too as well. And if there's anything else, feel free to reach out to us. Thank you for your time today.